So they're really not absolutes. I just want you to see a couple different ways of looking of how do we take this raw video and then make it into our final piece? What does that process look like, and how do I do that? And why would I choose one of these techniques over the others? So the first one I'm going to show you is called butcher block. I call it butcher block because this really involves taking all of your content, laying it out in front of you, and deleting the stuff you don't need. That's really what we're going to be doing in butcher block. So the steps here are you take all of your content, everything you've shot, and you put it on a timeline. So now I have everything that was shot. I start playing that timeline, and when I see something I don't want, I mark an endpoint, or I somehow mark that region of stuff I don't want, and then I lift it out. I play my video again until I find something else I don't want, and I lift that out. So it's basically having that big steak of content in front of you and just trimming the fat off of it. That's what this method is and how it works. Once you're done getting rid of the stuff you don't want, you can fine-tune a little, rearrange if necessary, and you're done. This works really well when there's not a lot of content or your editing requirements are minimal. So what does that look like? Well, let's say your unit has a Christmas party and you're tasked to shoot a video of it. So you have a camera, you roll for almost an hour and a half straight, just walking around shooting, people saying hello. Well, you walking around isn't that compelling. So you'll lift that out. Somebody says something that maybe shouldn't be shared with other people. You lift that out. There's some other nice scenes, you leave those. There's something that really doesn't work, or you didn't realize that you had the lens cap on. You remove that. When it's all done, you realize, oh, here's a great scene of, I got a wide shot from up on the balcony. I want to start with that. So you move that to the beginning. Put a fade up from black on the beginning, fade to black at the end, done editing. Butcher block. Does that make sense? How I would go about tackling that? Really, when you don't have a lot of content or your editing is minimal, butcher block works great. Next method is called sifting. And what this really refers to is being able to cull through your material, find the best of the best, and that's your raw ingredients, and then you use those as your palette to create your video. So typically you would go through your material from the very first shot to the very last shot. As you find something that is good, you set it aside. And you have to know your program to find manners in which you can set that aside. They all have it. You can use sequences to do it. You can use bins and subclips, etc. There's lots of different ways in modern video editing to set something aside. Now that you've set aside the good material, after going through all your content, you go back through that, and from good, you pull out better. So I'm sifting through what I've already sifted through, and I pull out the better stuff. And then I can even do another pass and just get the best of the best. And that sifting can actually look like the butcher block method. Because once I've pulled out good, and then I've pulled out the better from that, if I want the best, I'm just going to go through the better stuff and delete the things that really don't stand up to the standard I have for the rest of the video. So it's a little combination of methods. Once you have this great content somehow organized and in a container, you use it as the palette to build your show, putting things in order, working in a variety of different workflows, but you're just working with the best of the best. You can work with any of the other methods now. You can rearrange things, trim them. Trimming is adjusting the in and out or the start points to fine tune, and then you're done. You're done, you're done. This works great when there's really a lot of material. Working on a documentary right now where there's probably at least 100 hours of interviews. That's a lot of content. And so being able to manage that and figure out how am I going to tell this story in 12 minutes when I have 100 hours of content, well, I use the sifting method. I'm only going to work with the best of the best. And if somebody takes 90 seconds to say something, that's not going to work for me. No matter how impactful it is, it's just not going to work given the constraints of the project. So sifting is a great way when you have a ton of material and you want to just get down to the best stuff and use that as your ingredients. There's also an assembly line method, and this is really more of a linear method. So you start literally with the very first shot of your production. That's the first thing you put on the timeline, and then you look at what your second shot is going to be. And you put them down there exactly where you want them to start, exactly where you want them to stop, drop them into a timeline. You go that, from the start of the production all the way to the end in that assembly line method. And then you can go back through and rearrange if necessary, or just tweak. And then you're done. This linear method is frequently used when you know exactly what it is you want, or you are locked to script. So let's say that we shoot interviews with all of the deans of the schools and colleges of the university, and then I have transcripts made of those interviews. I provide those to my client. My client goes through and highlights what they, which sections they want, and they give me a list of what order they go in. So I'll look at their list. First thing is Dean Ramsey. Go find his clip, go to that section, highlight it, put it on the timeline. Second, he wants this, find it, put it on the timeline. Or you've done that same process yourself. It doesn't require someone else to do it. So when you have exact script, or you know exactly what you want, assembly line or linear works well. If you're working on a process, today in this video, I'm going to show you how to assemble an XM59 from scratch. Well, the final inspection is not going to come first. It's a pretty set progression of how that video is going to play out. So assembly line may work best there. And then when you're done, you go back and look at it and see, is this working, doing what I need it to do? So multiple passes, this is one of my favorites. What I do here is I'll actually go through and I do what's called the radio edit. I edit all of my content focusing only on the only on the audio. So it's just, I ignore the picture completely, does the audio work here? Then I'll go through and do a split pass, we'll talk about that in a second, cover. So I just task focused. This is really good when you need to be conservative with resources. So I will go through and do that radio cut. It's just the audio bytes where they need to be. And the picture I'm just ignoring. And I'll check with my client. Hey, I've taken 2 hours of the 40 hours we have budgeted, and I built this radio cut. Does this content work for you? Gives them control over the resources. I don't build an entire video, and they say, wait a minute, why'd you start with him? Because I've got to tear the whole thing apart and try and shuffle the deck again. Once they're good with that, I'll do one more thing to add production value. Are they okay with that? So it gives them these stops and these controls. So when you have limited resources, it's a great way to ensure that you're not wasting time and money. So the 4 methods I talked about there in workflow and techniques were the butcher block, the sifting, the linear or assembly line, and the multiple passes. And on one project, you can jump amongst those. You may have a video that talks about some very high-level stuff, but then has a section where we do a task that is a 7-step process. So you sift for the first part, and then do an assembly line for the next.